The planet Vero was calm for many generations. Its people lived in green valleys and built small cities near rivers and mountains. They were not a strong race of warriors. Instead, they were known for farming, art, and simple inventions. Their world had no great weapons and no powerful armies. The Varans trusted the Galactic Union to protect them, for the Union claimed to watch over many stars and promised safety to weaker worlds. Myra, a young Varan, often helped her family in the fields outside the city of Rilan. She had heard stories of the Union's power since childhood. Union ships crossed the stars, carrying trade, knowledge, and justice. Myra believed that if any danger came, the Union would act quickly. She never imagined that the stars could turn cold and silent. One day, dark shapes appeared in the sky. They were not Union ships. They were the fleet of the Kargans, a race feared for conquest. The Kargans attacked without warning. They struck the capital, burning towers and scattering the defenders. The Varan defense ships were too few and too old. Within days, the Kargans controlled the skies. Cities burned, and families fled to caves and forests. Myra stood on the edge of the valley, watching flames rise from Rilan. She felt fear and disbelief. She asked her father why the Union had not come. Her father only shook his head, unable to answer. Many people sent desperate signals into space, calling for help. The Union received those calls. The council met. Their decision was simple: Vera was not an important world. It had no rare minerals, no key trade routes, no value for strategy. To them, it was better to let Vera fall than risk a larger war. The Union declared Vera non-essential. With that choice, they left the planet to its fate. The message reached the people of Vera. It struck them harder than the fire of the enemy. Abandoned by those they trusted, the Varans felt small and powerless. Many cried in anger. Others hid in silence. For Myra, it was a wound she could not forget. She had grown up believing the Union's words. Now she saw them as empty promises. The Kargans were merciless. They captured towns, forced people into camps, and destroyed what they could not use. The skies above Vera filled with smoke and wreckage. Whole valleys turned silent. Myra and her family joined a group of survivors heading toward the mountains. They carried little with them, only food and water for a short time. The path was hard, but it was safer than staying in the ruined city. At night, Myra looked at the stars. She wondered if anyone out there cared. She thought of the great Union fleets that could destroy the Kargans in a single battle. Yet those fleets stayed in their safe stations, watching but not moving. To Myra, the galaxy felt cruel and distant. She whispered to herself, asking why the stars had so many laws but no compassion. Among the survivors, hope was weak. Some believed that if they waited long enough, the Union might change its mind. Others believed no help would ever come. People spoke of building hidden shelters and trying to live quietly under the shadow of the enemy. But Myra did not want to live only in fear. She wished for someone to rise, to fight, or at least to care. The silence of the galaxy was worse than the fire of war. One evening, the group reached a cliff where they could see far across the valley. Smoke rose in many places. Kargan patrols moved along the roads, hunting survivors. Myra's father told her to keep strong, but she could see the pain in his eyes. He, too, had trusted the Union. He, too, now felt the sharp cut of betrayal. Far above, beyond sight, a single refugee ship left Vera's orbit. It carried frightened families who had escaped in haste. Their ship was weak and poorly supplied. They sent out signals, calling again for help. The Union ignored them. Yet in the vast sea of stars, signals travel in strange ways. Sometimes they reach ears that were never meant to hear them. That single call, filled with fear and hope, drifted toward the unknown. It carried with it a simple truth: Vera was not yet dead. Some still lived. Some still hoped. Myra did not know where that signal would go. She did not know if anyone would answer. But in her heart, she wished that someone, somewhere, would look at her people and say the words she longed to hear: "You are not alone." And so, under the cold stars, Vera waited. The refugee ship from Vera drifted in space. Its engines were weak, and the fuel was almost gone. Inside, families huddled together, whispering in fear. Children cried softly while elders tried to comfort them. Food was low, and water was rationed. Every hour, the crew sent a signal into the void, hoping someone would hear. But no Union ships came. No message of hope was received. The silence of the galaxy felt endless. Among the passengers was Myra, who had managed to escape with her father. She stood by the window, staring at the stars. She wondered if they would die here, forgotten in the emptiness. Her father sat quietly beside her, his face tired and pale. Many others on the ship no longer believed in rescue. Some whispered that it would be better to return to Vera and face the enemy than to starve slowly in space. Then, on the third day, something changed. A faint signal reached them. The ship's crew rushed to the controls, unsure of what they had heard. The signal was not from the Union. It was from a small human exploration vessel traveling near the edge of the sector. The humans had picked up the distress call. Their captain, Tom, listened carefully to the broken words of fear and desperation. He knew the Union had already declared Vera non-essential. Helping the Verans could bring punishment. Yet when Tom looked at his own crew, he saw only one answer in their eyes. They would help. The human vessel changed course and approached the weak refugee ship. At first, the Verans feared it was another enemy. But soon, the screen lit up, and Myra saw faces that were not Kargan. They were human. Their clothes were plain, and their ship looked small compared to Union warships, but their voices carried warmth. Tom introduced himself and explained that he and his crew were explorers, not soldiers. They had little, but they would share what they had. Food, water, and medicine were transferred quickly. Myra could not believe it. She asked why the humans would risk themselves for strangers. Tom's answer was simple. Because you called for help. And we heard you. That is enough. Those words struck Myra deeply. They were so different from the Union's cold silence. For the first time since the invasion began, she felt a spark of hope. Her father, who had nearly lost faith, gripped Tom's hand firmly in gratitude when the humans boarded to check the sick and wounded. The humans learned quickly about the enemy that had taken Vera. Tom listened to every detail of the Kargan's cruelty. He also listened to the silence of the Union. His crew was shocked, but not surprised. Humanity had always walked a different path from the rest of the galaxy. Where the Union followed rules and weighed value, humans often acted on feeling. They believed in loyalty and courage even when logic said otherwise. Tom faced a choice. He could repair the refugee ship, give them supplies, and let them drift toward another world. Or he could take a greater risk, stand with them against the Kargans. His crew gathered in the control room. Lena, the engineer, argued that they could not fight an entire fleet, but she also said they could not walk away from people who had no one else. Arun, the pilot, simply said, if we leave, we will never forgive ourselves. One by one, the crew agreed. They would help. When Myra heard their decision, she felt her heart race. For the first time, someone outside Vera cared enough to stand beside them. She saw courage in these humans that her people had never known. She began to believe that her world might not be lost after all. The plan was simple but dangerous. The humans would escort the refugee ship to a hidden moon where survivors could rest. Then Tom's crew would return to Vera with supplies and attempt to repair the broken defense systems. It was not enough to win a war, but it was a start. The Verans would at least have a chance to resist instead of waiting to die. The journey to the hidden moon was tense. Kargan patrols searched the space around Vera, hunting for refugees. Twice, the human ship had to cut power and hide behind asteroids as patrols passed by. Arun's skill as a pilot kept them safe. Myra watched in silence, amazed by how calmly the humans worked even under great danger. They trusted one another completely. That trust gave her strength. When they finally reached the hidden moon, the refugees wept with relief. They built shelters from old mining tunnels while the humans unloaded food and medicine. It was not much, but it meant survival. Children laughed again, something Myra thought she would never hear. For the first time, the refugees felt they might have a future. Tom promised to return. "We cannot fight your battles for you," he said, "but we can stand with you." His words spread among the Verans like fire. People who had been broken by despair began to lift their heads. They whispered that perhaps they were not alone after all. As the human ship prepared to leave for Vera again, Myra stood at the edge of the tunnel and watched. She felt a bond growing between her people and these strangers from Earth. She knew the coming days would be hard. The Kargans were strong, and the Union remained silent. But now, for the first time, hope was real. And hope, she realized, was the first step to freedom. The human ship returned to Vera with determination. Inside, Tom and his crew studied maps of the planet. They had no fleet, no powerful weapons, only courage and a will to fight. Yet they believed even a small group could make a difference. Arun guided the ship through hidden routes to avoid Kargan patrols. Lena checked the engines and kept them steady. Everyone on board knew the risk, but no one turned away. On the surface, scattered groups of Veran survivors were hiding in forests, mountains, and caves. When Tom's crew landed near one such group, Myra ran to greet them. She had left the refugee moon behind, choosing to return with the humans. She wanted to help her people fight back. Her father worried for her safety, but he saw the fire in her eyes and understood she could not remain behind. Tom gathered the Veran leaders in a ruined hall. The roof was broken, and light fell through cracks, but the place became a council chamber. The leaders spoke of despair. The Kargans controlled the skies, and their patrols roamed the land. No one believed the Verans could resist. They had no warships, only farming tools and broken machines. Tom listened, then stood and spoke firmly. "You are not alone anymore. You can fight. You only need to believe you can stand." His voice carried across the room. At first, the leaders were doubtful. But when Myra stepped forward and spoke of the courage she had seen in the humans, their hearts began to stir. If strangers could risk everything for them, could they not risk something for themselves? The next days were spent in preparation. Lena and several Verans repaired old generators, turning them into makeshift defense turrets. Arun taught young Verans how to fly small shuttles for scouting. Tom trained groups to move silently at night and strike quickly at Kargan patrols. For the first time, the survivors felt like fighters, not only victims. Myra worked beside Lena, learning how to use tools and connect wires. She was surprised by her own strength. Every spark from the machines felt like a spark in her heart. The Varans had always built for peace, but now their hands created weapons for survival. It was not in their nature, yet they understood that without resistance, their world would vanish. Soon, the chance for their first test arrived. A Kargan patrol of 2 ships landed near the valley to search for survivors. In the past, the Varans would have fled. This time, they stood ready. Tom organized a plan. Arun would distract the ships with quick flying, while Varan teams, armed with new energy rifles built from mining tools, would strike the soldiers on the ground. The night was quiet as they waited. The Kargan soldiers marched through the valley with heavy steps. Suddenly, lights flashed in the sky as Arun's shuttle raced across, drawing the ships to follow. At that moment, Myra and her group sprang from cover. They fired their rifles, not with perfect aim but with desperate will. The Kargans, surprised by the sudden attack, stumbled. Explosions lit the valley. The battle was small, but when it ended, the Kargans were gone, and the Varans were still standing. Cheers rose in the valley. It was the first time since the invasion began that the Varans had won anything. It was not a great victory, but it was a beginning. Children who had once cried in fear now clapped their hands in joy. Elders who had thought all was lost smiled with pride. Myra felt her chest fill with hope. For once, her people had shown that they were not powerless. Word spread quickly across the land. Survivors hiding in distant caves heard of the victory and began to believe resistance was possible. Groups that had once hidden in silence now sent messengers to join the humans. The small fire of hope grew brighter, and the Kargans began to notice. The enemy increased patrols, sending more ships to crush the survivors. But Tom and his crew were ready. They guided the Varans to build traps, to strike and vanish, to never meet the enemy in open battle. The humans taught them to fight not with numbers but with cleverness. Slowly, the balance began to shift. The Varans were still weak, but they were no longer broken. One evening, as the survivors gathered around a fire in the forest, Myra looked at Tom and asked, "Why do you help us when even the Union turned away?" Tom smiled faintly. "Because leaving you would be the same as leaving ourselves. Humanity does not abandon those who need us. If we stand together, we are stronger." Myra held onto those words. They were more than a promise. They were a new way of seeing the stars. For the first time since the invasion, the people of Vera slept with hope instead of despair. Their first stand had been small, but it had changed everything. They had shown the galaxy that they would not die quietly. And with humanity at their side, their fight had only just begun. The first victory of the Varans and their human allies spread across the valleys like wind. Survivors who had once hidden in silence now whispered of courage. Families dared to hope. But the Kargans did not stay blind to this new spirit. Their commanders grew angry that weak farmers had resisted even a single patrol. They decided to strike harder, to crush all sparks of rebellion before they became flames. One morning, Arun's shuttle picked up a massive energy reading. Kargan warships were moving toward the valley where many Varan families had gathered. It was not a patrol this time. It was an army. Tom gathered the leaders at once. His face was calm, but his voice was firm. "They are coming in great numbers. If we stay here, we will be destroyed. But if we scatter, they will hunt us down one by one. We must stand together." The words carried weight. Some of the Varans trembled. Others wanted to flee. But Myra rose and spoke with clear strength. If we run now, we will lose everything we built. We must show them we are not afraid. Her courage gave others the will to listen. The humans and Varans worked quickly. Lena directed groups to set traps along the valley path. Old machines were turned into mines. Broken towers were rigged to fall and block the road. Arun prepared his shuttle for quick strikes, though its weapons were small compared to enemy ships. Everyone knew the chances were slim, yet no one gave up. As the sun set, the enemy came. The sky filled with the dark shapes of Kargan warships. Their heavy engines shook the ground. Soldiers poured down from the sky, marching with weapons that burned with red light. The valley seemed too small to hold such fear. Yet in the shadows, the defenders waited. The first trap exploded as a column of Kargan troops marched through the narrow pass. Rocks and fire tumbled down, crushing machines and scattering soldiers. Varan fighters fired from the ridges, their rifles glowing blue in the night. Arun swooped down with his shuttle, firing quick bursts before pulling away. For a moment, it seemed the defenders had the upper hand. But the Kargans were relentless. Their warships opened fire, tearing through hillsides. Whole sections of forest went up in flames. The ground shook as heavy walkers advanced. The defenders fought bravely, yet they were pushed back step by step. A tower rigged with charges fell too early, missing its target. A mine failed to trigger. Fear spread as the enemy pressed closer. Myra found herself in the middle of the fight. Smoke burned her eyes, but she kept firing. She saw her people fall beside her, yet she also saw humans standing strong. Lena, covered in dust, repaired a broken turret under fire. Arun's shuttle spun through the air, damaged but still striking. And Tom moved among the fighters, lifting their spirits, refusing to let fear take them. His voice carried above the chaos, "Stand firm. Do not let them break you." The battle raged until the night was deep. By dawn, the defenders were battered. Many shelters were destroyed. Families wept for those lost. Yet the Kargans did not take the valley. After hours of fighting, they pulled back, leaving smoke and ruin behind. The victory felt hollow. The cost was heavy. Many had fallen, and the valley was scarred. The survivors were exhausted, their strength nearly gone. Myra sat among the ruins, her heart aching. She thought of the Union, safe in their distant stations, and wondered how they could ignore such suffering. For a moment, despair threatened to return. Then Tom sat beside her. His arm was wrapped in bandages, but his eyes were steady. "We are still here," he said softly. "That means we are not beaten." Myra looked at him, surprised. She saw not defeat in his face but determination. Around them, others slowly rose. Children carried water to the wounded. Elders began to clear the rubble. Even after such loss, life moved forward. Later, as the survivors gathered, Lena spoke of repairing stronger weapons from the wreckage of enemy machines. Arun promised to fly again once his shuttle was patched. And Tom made a vow. "The Kargans believe they can break you with fear. But they do not understand. Every time you rise, you become stronger. And we will rise again." Myra felt the words like a spark inside her. The Varans were broken, yes, but not destroyed. Their enemies had shown great power, but they had not crushed the will of the people. With humanity beside them, the Varans had learned something new. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to stand even when fear was great. The valley lay in ruins, yet the spirit of its people remained. From that day forward, Myra knew the fight would not be easy, but it would not end in silence. The Kargans had won a battle, but they had failed to kill hope. And hope, once born, was harder to destroy than any city of stone. The valley was scarred, but its people refused to fall into silence again. Smoke still rose from burned shelters, yet survivors worked side by side, rebuilding with steady hands. The Kargans had left behind wreckage, and Lena led teams to strip every broken machine for parts. From steel and wires, she shaped new defenses. Arun's shuttle, though scarred by fire, was patched and ready to fly once more. Still, the enemy was stronger, and everyone knew it. The next strike could come at any time, and there would be no safety in hiding forever. Tom understood this truth. He stood with his crew near the comm station, which had been repaired with great effort. He knew that weapons alone would not save Vera. They needed more than courage. They needed the galaxy to see what was happening. The Union ignores you, Tom said, looking at the gathered Verans, but that does not mean the rest of the stars must remain blind. If they see your struggle, some will feel shame, and others may feel hope. We cannot fight this war alone, but perhaps we do not have to. The idea filled the air like a spark. Myra stepped forward. You mean to send a message? Yes, Tom answered. Not just a call for help. A promise. We will tell the galaxy what is happening here, and we will declare where we stand. The Veran leaders hesitated. They feared that such a message might bring greater punishment. The Kargans would hear it, and the Union might brand them rebels against order. But Myra's eyes were bright. If we stay silent, we are already lost. If the galaxy hears us, at least we will not die unseen. Her words carried the strength of someone who had seen despair and chosen hope. That night, under a dark sky filled with stars, Tom and his crew worked on the transmission. The comm dish was cracked and bent, but Lena repaired it with parts from enemy wreckage. Arun adjusted the power levels so the signal would travel far. Myra and several Verans wrote the words they wished to speak, words born from pain but also from courage. When the system was ready, Tom stood before the camera. His uniform was torn, his arms still wrapped in bandages, yet his voice was steady. This is Captain Tom of Earth. I speak not for the Union but for humanity. The world of Vera has been abandoned by those who promised protection. Its people are hunted and left to die. We will not accept this. Humanity stands with Vera. He stepped aside, and Myra came forward. Her hands trembled, but her voice grew stronger with each word. We are not warriors. We are farmers, builders, and dreamers. But we refuse to vanish in silence. We will fight for our homes, for our children, and for the right to live free. If you hear this message, know that we do not ask you to fight our battles. We ask only that you remember us. And if you have the courage, stand with us. The message was sent into the stars, carried on waves of light. It reached not only the Union but countless worlds across distant systems. On trading planets, workers paused to listen. On quiet colonies, families gathered around screens. Some wept, others clenched their fists in anger. The Union Council, safe in their halls, heard it too, and their faces grew pale with worry. Humanity had defied them openly, and that defiance spread like fire. Within days, small acts of support began to appear. A cargo vessel from a distant world dropped supplies near the hidden moon where refugees stayed. A group of alien traders sent medicine in secret. Messages of encouragement reached the comm station, simple words but filled with meaning. You are not alone. We believe in you. Stand strong. The Kargans, furious, launched new attacks, but they could not silence the message. Every attempt to jam the signal failed. The words had already traveled too far. Across the galaxy, people now spoke of Vera and the humans who stood beside them. For Myra, the change was more than she had dreamed. She saw her people walking with heads held high again. Children drew symbols of hope on walls. Elders told stories of courage by firelight. The phrase "we stand with you" echoed everywhere, not only as human words but as a vow adopted by the Varans themselves. Tom knew the fight was far from over. The Kargans were still powerful, and the Union still cold. But something greater had begun. This was no longer only the struggle of one world. It was a test of conscience for the entire galaxy. As night fell again, Myra stood outside, looking at the stars. For the first time, they no longer seemed silent. She imagined voices carried on the light, voices of strangers who now cared. The war ahead would be long, but she believed the tide had turned. Vera had been left to die. But now, with humanity's promise, the galaxy could no longer look away. The galaxy had heard the message, and small acts of support began to arrive. Supplies, medicine, and information reached the Varans through secret channels. Some alien traders sent food and tools. Others offered intelligence on the Kargans' movements. The humans monitored it all carefully. Tom, Lena, and Arun coordinated the new allies, turning hope into action. The Kargans, confident in their numbers, continued their attacks. But now the Varans were different. They were no longer afraid. They had learned to fight in clever ways, using traps, terrain, and sudden strikes. Every engagement was guided by human tactics, turning weakness into advantage. Small groups could slow the enemy, forcing them to spread their forces thin. Myra moved among the fighters, helping where she could. Her confidence had grown. She taught younger Varans how to work together, how to move without being seen, and how to believe that their actions mattered. The humans admired her courage. They saw that Varans, who had once been quiet and fearful, could now make smart decisions and act boldly. One day, Arun spotted a Kargan convoy approaching a key supply route. Tom called a meeting with Varan leaders. "This is an opportunity," he said. "We cannot destroy the fleet, but we can force them to retreat from this area. If we succeed, we will protect the refugees and show the enemy that we are not powerless." Plans were made quickly. Lena and her engineers rigged makeshift explosives in narrow passes along the route. Varan fighters were assigned to attack only when the Kargans were in the right positions. Arun would fly above to distract and confuse the enemy, while Tom would lead the main strike with precision. The attack began at dawn. Kargan ships moved slowly along the route, unaware of the traps. As they entered the first pass, explosions tore through the path, forcing their vehicles to stop and scatter. Varan fighters struck from hidden ridges, while Arun's shuttle darted between ships, firing bursts and luring attention away from the defenders. The Kargans were caught off guard. Their numbers were great, but their movements became chaotic. Human planning and Varan courage combined in a way that the enemy had not expected. After hours of careful fighting, the convoy was forced to retreat, leaving supplies behind. It was a victory, not of strength, but of strategy, courage, and unity. News of the success spread quickly. Refugees in the Hidden Moon celebrated. Survivors in other valleys sent messages of gratitude. Even distant worlds that had secretly supported Vera felt inspired. Humanity's example had shown that courage could ripple across the stars. Tom gathered his crew and Myra to discuss the next steps. "The enemy knows we are serious now," he said. they will attack harder. But if we continue to stand together, to use our minds as much as our courage, we can defend our people and protect our world. Myra looked at the humans, then at her fellow Varans. She realized that something had changed. For the first time, her people were not only surviving, they were leading. They had become a force the enemy could not ignore. The Kargans had underestimated them, and that mistake could cost the invaders greatly. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Lena improved the turrets, adding small modifications from Kargan technology. Arun taught more Varans how to pilot shuttles and scout enemy positions. Tom and Myra worked together to inspire others, telling stories of small victories and acts of bravery. The survivors were no longer hiding. They were organizing. Then, a larger enemy fleet was detected approaching from the north. This time, it was not just a patrol or convoy, it was a strike force meant to crush resistance completely. The humans and Varans stood ready. Every trap, every hidden weapon, every trained fighter would play a part. As the ships neared, Myra felt her heart beat faster. She remembered the first time the humans had arrived, the first victory, and the message sent across the stars. All of it had led to this moment. Now, she understood that courage was contagious. One act of bravery could inspire many, and together, they could change the course of events. The first shots were fired. Explosions lit the sky. The battle had begun. And for the first time, the enemy would discover that Vero was no longer a world left to die. With humans and Varans united, the tide was finally turning. The northern horizon glowed with the engines of the approaching Kargan fleet. Their ships moved like shadows across the sky, dark and threatening. The Varans had prepared as best they could. Trenches, hidden turrets, and traps lined the valley. Shuttles flew in formation, ready to confuse the enemy. Every fighter was ready to defend their home. Myra stood on a ridge, overlooking the valley. Her heart beat fast, but she felt no fear. She had seen her people rise from despair, rebuild from ruins, and fight with courage beyond what she had imagined. Beside her, Tom adjusted his gear, his face calm and steady. "This is it," he said. "We stand together now. The galaxy is watching, and we will not fall." The first shots lit the sky. Kargan warships fired their heavy beams, destroying parts of the valley. Yet human shuttles darted between them, drawing attention and creating confusion. Varan fighters struck from the ridges, their aim precise despite the chaos. Explosions shook the ground, and smoke filled the air, but the defenders held their positions. Lena ran from turret to turret, adjusting controls and repairing weapons. Her hands were blistered, her face smeared with dust and sweat. She moved quickly, ensuring every turret was firing when needed. Arun's shuttle soared overhead, scouting the enemy's movements, giving constant updates to the ground forces. The humans had taught the Varans to think, to act, and to trust in one another. The Kargans advanced relentlessly, confident that their numbers would crush the defenders. But the humans and Varans had learned to fight together. Traps slowed the enemy, and unexpected strikes from hidden positions made the Kargans cautious. Every step forward cost them heavily. The defenders moved like one body, united in purpose and courage. Myra saw friends she had once thought lost fighting with determination. She helped guide civilians to safety while calling out instructions to fighters around her. Her voice was steady, her presence inspiring. People who had been too afraid to act were now moving with purpose, striking fear into the enemy that had once terrified them. Hours passed, and the enemy began to tire. The Kargans had underestimated not only the human tactics but also the determination of the Vayrans. With every small victory, the defenders gained confidence. Tom led several daring strikes, breaking through enemy lines to destroy key machines. Arun's shuttle guided groups of fighters to critical positions, turning the battle in their favor. Finally, the enemy commanders realized that their strike was failing. Supplies were running low, machines were destroyed, and their soldiers were demoralized. They called for a retreat. The sky, once filled with fire and shadows, slowly cleared. Veyra had survived. The survivors cheered. Families embraced. Children ran through the valley, laughing among the ruins. Myra felt tears of relief and joy fill her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she could breathe without fear. Her people had stood against a great enemy and survived. Tom gathered the Veyran leaders and survivors. "You have shown the galaxy something important," he said. "You are not weak. You are not alone. Courage is stronger than fear. Loyalty is stronger than rules. Humanity will always stand with those who choose to fight for what is right." The Union had watched quietly, unable to ignore the events any longer. Reports reached their halls, describing how humans and Vayrans had resisted together. Embarrassed, the council admitted that Veyra's survival was due to courage, strategy, and unity. The message from humanity had changed the course of history. In the weeks that followed, Veyra began to rebuild. Homes were repaired, farms were replanted, and new schools were opened. Children learned about courage and unity. Adults shared stories of the human crew who had risked everything to help strangers. The phrase "we stand with you" became a promise, repeated by Vayrans and humans alike. Myra stood with Tom on a high ridge overlooking the valley. The sun rose, bathing the land in warm light. "We have come so far," she said softly. Tom nodded. "Yes. And this is only the beginning. The galaxy will remember what happened here. No world will be left to die without someone standing beside it." Myra smiled, feeling a sense of pride and hope she had never known. Veyra had been abandoned, but its people had not surrendered. With humanity at their side, they had proven that courage, unity, and loyalty could change the fate of a world. And so, Veyra began a new chapter. Its people were free, its children were safe, and its story would inspire the stars. The enemy had been defeated, but more importantly, the spirit of hope had survived. Myra knew that the galaxy had learned a powerful lesson: even the smallest and weakest could stand tall when they had allies who believed in them. The stars no longer seemed distant or silent. They were full of possibility, full of life, and full of promise. Veyra would never forget that someone had chosen to stand with them. And humanity had shown the galaxy the meaning of courage, honor, and heart.